What is going on, traders? Welcome back to the Traveling Trader. Happy Tuesday to you. Good to see you guys again. If this is the first time on the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you like what you see and you're into technical analysis and trading strategy. What I wanted to talk about today is Bitcoin going to fall below 7,000 in the short term. And looking at the chart here, there's definitely a case for it, and I'll tell you why and how you could possibly play it if you're, into swing trading. If you're a long-term trader, I would just focus on buying the major dips, dollar cost averaging into the major dips, and getting the best entry you can for when we see a rally in the future, whether that's 2020 or 2021. Who knows? I'm not a fortune teller, and neither are you. But looking at the short-term chart for Bitcoin, this is on the daily. We can easily see a retreat right back down to around 6,800, 6,900 before we rally back up again. And if you look at what Bitcoin is doing within this descending channel, every time it comes up on resistance, every time it uses this white line, this 21 EMA as resistance, we do see a dip, right? Like a valley before breaking above it. And obviously the 21 EMA is a great EMA on most assets, not just crypto, but especially on Bitcoin, because it is a 24/7 market. So you can kind of use the 21 EMA as your marker for short-term entries and exits. But every time it comes up on the 21 EMA's resistance, we see this slight dip before coming above it again. You see it here back in August, right? You see the slight dip before going above it again. Same thing here back in October, right? We fell below the 21 EMA, retested it as resistance, and then you see the dip that happened towards the third week of October before climbing back up again. So I definitely can see a case where we retest that 6,800, 6,900 level before crossing above it again. And if you're thinking why does Bitcoin need to cross above it again? Well, it doesn't need to, but I do think that's the plausible scenario, is that we will stay within this channel. One, because it is the trend currently, right? Trend is your friend until the end. So it makes no sense to not trade the trend. If you're swing trading, you give yourself the best opportunity to trade within this trend. And that's what we've been doing, right? Buy at the support, short at the resistance, et cetera, et cetera. But if you take a look at the weekly chart, you'll see that Bitcoin formed this golden cross, the mini golden cross between the 50 and the 100 MAs, right? You see that here. The orange on my chart is the 50. The yellow is the 100. And you see it forming this golden cross here, right? And we have the same descending channel pattern on Bitcoin on the weekly. But on the weekly, it's respecting the support and resistance a lot more than the daily. So the daily, obviously, you're more zoomed in, right? So the price action looks more haphazard. You do have these sideways periods here that you see, but on the weekly, it looks like a very tight-knit pattern where you're hitting resistance, support. Every time it retested the support, it goes back to retest resistance. Every time it retests support, it goes back to retest resistance. So I have no other reason to believe why Bitcoin in the short term won't do the same, or in the midterm, I guess, if we're looking at the weekly, won't do the same thing, right? So every time we hit this support, we go back to retest resistance. So I do believe that there is a case where Bitcoin can hit that 6,800, 6,900 level again before coming back up to retest resistance, which is currently at around 8,800. That to me looks like the plausible scenario. Now, on the really bearish side, if we close below support here, this blue line here, if we close below support, then there's definitely a case for retesting the 200 moving average, something that Bitcoin hasn't really done, mainly because, it's still a kind of a young asset, right? We've only had it for about 9 years now. So, it hasn't really had the chance to test and retest the 200 MAs. But looking at the chart data that we do have, Bitcoin hasn't really retested the 200 MA after hitting it on the weekly. This is when the bullish rally starts to gradually happen. Not sure why this magenta circle is here. But yeah, so that is what I see Bitcoin doing in the short to medium term, right? Is creating a small retreat back to 6,800, 6,900 level before shooting back up to, on the daily, you might see some resistance, at the 50 MA, which is currently at around 8,200. The 100 MA is currently at around 86, 8,700. And keep in mind that Bitcoin does have an annoying tendency to trade sideways. You see here between September and October, this was a month of sideways trading, and we could see that for sure. I'm not saying that we're going to see, a dip to 6,800 in the next day or so, and then an overnight rally to 8,800. I'm not saying that. I'm not really one for timed predictions. If you've been around this channel, you know that. So Bitcoin can easily spend a month or even longer trading sideways before these moves happen. And if you look at Bitcoin's volatility right now, it is currently at a low, right? 2.68% is lower than the 60, 120 or 252 day estimate. So what happens when Bitcoin's volatility is low and volume is low? This is when major moves happen, right? So that's the other reason why I think Bitcoin is definitely due for a major move soon, whether that's in a week or a month, I don't know. But look at the volume here, right? The volume is just absolutely shit. This is the VFI. We're well below zero. We haven't seen these levels of negative volume since Bitcoin was at around $3,500 back in the beginning of the year. So low volume, low volatility, still within this trend line, definitely supports a big move for Bitcoin in the near term. Now we'll go over a few alts. Obviously, yesterday we had this crazy candle on MATIC, right? Or MATIC. MATIC dropped from, it was at about over 550 sats all the way down to 150 sats. That is crazy. And sats, by sats I mean satoshis, for those of you that are new to trading, which is really just the value of an altcoin in Bitcoin, right? Thank God we had a trailing stop on MATIC, and you could see here on the alerts when I sent out an alert we actually made a good profit on MATIC. Where is that? If you want access to the trade alerts, by the way, link is in the description. You're seeing all of the old alerts here. But if you look on MATIC, we actually made a good amount before setting a trailing stop. And I sent it last Wednesday, actually, saying that MATIC has hit and surpassed our goal. Make sure you set a trailing stop to secure profits, right? And this is exactly why. And especially in crypto, you can never be too sure. It's a 24/7 market. Anything can happen while you're sleeping, while you're out partying, while you're taking a shit, whatever. Anything can happen. There isn't a market close in the same way that we have in the stock market. So you have to, especially if you're up on profits, you have to be diligent about setting trailing stops, or at least a stop limit at the minimum. And if you don't know how to do that, then learn how to do that, either by watching videos or take the one-on-ones with me. I do one-on-ones every month. I take on about 5 students. That is the max. I usually cap it at that. If you want to be considered for the next month, that link is in the description. Slots go fast, so sign up if you want to do the one-on-one training with me. You get 3 video sessions a month, and they're worth an hour, or they go for an hour long each. Anyway, MATIC wasn't the only one that suffered this decline. If you look at FET, there was a lot of altcoins against Bitcoin. I think it was just sort of a snowball effect. If you look at FET, same thing. It wasn't as bad of a drop, obviously. RVN was pretty terrible too. Dropped off from its resistance all the way down here to support. Looks like it's ripe for an entry, a very low risk entry. And when I say low risk, it's because you can set your stop limit very close to your entry. So if your entry is at support here, for instance, on something like RVN, you could set a stop limit really very close to where you enter. And that way, if the coin does rally, obviously you benefit from those gains. But if the coin retreats, then you're out relatively unharmed. So those are the types of opportunities you want to look for, these low risk, high reward entries where you can exit safely. A couple of other coins I'll go over that we made a killing on: XTZ, Tezos. We made a killing on Tezos, up 33% since we entered here after it retested the 21 EMA, this white line, forming this golden cross between the 50 and the 200 MA here, right? This is what you want to see. Volume largely positive. If you compare this VFI to, say, Bitcoin, for instance, we're well above zero. I mean, we're at a reading of almost 10 on the VFI, which is amazing. But this resistance here seems to be plaguing Tezos going all the way back to May. I mean, this is a 6-month long resistance that we see here. And, you know, after being overbought, Tezos is naturally cooling off at this resistance level. But if it retests the 21 EMA again, especially with this golden cross and the good volume, we could see Tezos finally break out of this resistance level. It's never retested this resistance level after forming a golden cross, at least since we've been forming this pattern since May. So good job to those who took the trade alert on Tezos. Link is the other one that was doing well for us, made about 10% on the last rally for Link, but currently it looks like it's in this consolidation zone after hitting resistance mid-November and just crashing hard. But you see the RSI and the MACD both supporting a midterm rally for Link, especially at these price levels here. The VFI is still relatively great, showing a lot of positive volume. What the VFI tries to tell you is whether the bulk of the volume is largely positive or negative, right? Inflows or outflows. Are people selling off and not buying? As you see on Bitcoin, when you look at the VFI, you see that it's negative. It's below zero, right? So there aren't a lot of people buying, especially after they're selling. So you see all this red volume. There isn't a lot of buying to replace that red volume. Whereas if you look on something like Link, most of the volume is green. Most of the volume is positive. So yeah, there are sell-offs, but there are enough people that are keeping their Link after buying. So that's what the VFI attempts to tell you, is whether, you know, the volume is largely positive or negative. Anyway, that is it for this video. Go ahead and like it if you got anything out of this video. Leave a question or a comment below. I won't do a stock market update today because I don't have the time, but in the next video this week, I will be doing a stock market update. However, I will still be sending my stock portfolio and stock trade alerts in the Discord. So click the link if you want access to those trade alerts. You get crypto and stock trade alerts, and you're also automatically entered for a 0.03 Bitcoin drawing that I do on the beginning of every month. A random drawing just as a way to give back and say thank you for being a part of the wonderful community that we created. Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Stay safe out there, traders. Peace.